Welcome back to another episode. I think building on last week's episode, George, we went through the security posture and your layers of security. There were some really good points in there. There'd probably be our people watching at home. We could probably deep dive and elaborate on that a little bit more. So just wondering today, maybe you could run us through your layers of security and what you're looking for at each segment.
Yeah, look, thanks, Brett. Realistically, when you're talking about layers, it's all about security and risk management. So you really have to look at, from a holistic point of view, what is it that you're actually trying to identify and understand from a risk perspective, both natural and human. So all those play a key part in your broader security risk management portfolio. So when you first start, you really need to bake it in. You have to have security risk posture baked into your business. And what that means is effectively from the day you actually find a site, whatever you're looking at, you have to assess the surrounding environment. And then from there, it decides what goes into your various layers of security. So if I start at effectively layer one, which is a layer that exists in front of your perimeter fence, if you've got one, or a holistic line around your site. What we look at in there is effectively the neighbours. What's going on in and around your environment? Do you need to deploy some sort of vehicle mitigation that can be baked into the landscape? For example, you can put in a drain culvert. You can deploy some sort of garden beds that all add to the vehicle mitigation portfolio. And secondly, having that broader camera visibility in front of your perimeter fence line. By having that, you can assess what's going on in and around your perimeter and effectively be able to react accordingly around that whole site. So having that broader visibility on and in front of your fence line is key and an integral part to building up that initial layer of security. And obviously within the fence line, again, if you don't have a fence, you can have an imaginary line. Some buildings are built without fence lines, but you can still use your perimeter cameras to be able to monitor those environments. But crucial to the whole program is having the right people with the right training and the right procedures in place to be able to assess what's going on in and around that environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So that would be what a layer one and a layer two?
It effectively overlaps, correct? So your layer one, merges into your layer two support, which can then be your first entry point into your perimeter. So do you want to have a restricted access into that first perimeter layer? Do you want to allow people that are authorized via tickets or whatever other system your business uses, but is not actually able to go any further? Or do you just have a normal traffic flow of people into that environment? And again, all those three different scenarios add different risk opportunities, different threats that you need to then address through your broader electronic security management system, your video, obviously your video surveillance, which is integrated into that, your access system, which should be integrated into that. But it's effectively having that whole program in place. So layer one and layer two effectively play a key role in managing those first parts of your security risk management portfolio.
So when you're designing, or I guess your preference when you're looking, or you're doing a risk assessment on a new site or something, are you looking for that choke point? Is that what you're going to funnel everybody through to, capture them there, or what's your intention?
It depends on what sort of environment you're trying to build and how deep you want that into your perimeter. So some sort of businesses, for example, in data center business, you want to have that as far away from your, I guess, your last layer of defense. So that way you can actually manage any threats or risks further towards the outer perimeter. Other environments, you might want to bring it further into the portfolio. And again, depending on what sort of environment you're looking to manage from a security point of view. For me, the further out of your internal perimeters, the better. And the closer to the external layers, the better, because then it gives you an opportunity to build up your security posture within your facility. So yes, in my opinion, I
you'd always try and funnel them through, I guess.
Yeah, correct. So effectively, what you should again, you got to assess your risk and your threats. What is it you're trying to address? And if you're trying to manage, and in the terminology used about funneling the personnel through a certain point, you need to be able to then manage how many people go through at a certain time and negate things like tailgating and opportunities to throw things over an internal fence line. So it's funny. I've seen scenarios where people put what we call speed styles in, or racing gates, that are only 1.2 metres high. That they say, that stops anti-tailgating. Well, it doesn't stop me throwing a bag over the top of them to someone else. If someone's not watching, I can throw a bag over the top to someone else that's got something in it that, I don't need to go past that racing gate, but I can give them material to effectively add to the threat environment. So it depends what threat you're trying to treat.
Yep. Okay. So look, you've got your tree line, gully, vent. You're coming in into your layer 2, and you funneled them through like the check-in point. Yep. What comes next? What are you putting in place in the next couple of layers?
Yeah, look, again, it's quite standard. So you can add, again, your electronic security management system and have that fully integrated with your video, your access, your keying system, and your policies and procedures. They're key as part of your layering of security. You have to have all of that in place to be able to have a true layer of security. So people just think, yes, I'll put a camera here and I'll put a card reader there with 2-factor authentication and my security posture's done.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
People forget the biggest threat to our environment is a human. So if you don't have the right training, the right policies, the right procedures, the right guidelines in place, all the best electronic security is just a waste of time.
So you mentioned your policies and procedures. We'll have to circle back on that. I mean, we're in the data center industry. That's bread and butter. We could probably sit here and talk for 2 hours on what good is in that space, to be honest. But you mentioned something there about 1.2 meter high entryway. What's your preference there for your access portals?
Look, for me, my preference is to deploy proper full height security portals that effectively allow a single person through. For example, if we're talking about the Gunnebo high-sec 9s that are deployed in various environments as a guide, effectively you can have weight and girth measurement in those machines. They can be ballistic rated. So there's various other factors that you can add into that. You can have a layer at the front of the portal that has 2-factor, then another 2-factor within the portal. So you can really build up that layer of security right there and there. But the key to anything you're doing in security is understanding your threats and the risks that you're trying to mitigate. It's you got to look at things from an ALAP perspective. So effectively looking at things as reasonable as possible to mitigate your threats and risks in your environment.
Yeah. Okay. So then you funneled me in from a choke point. I've gone through the access portal. What am I going to see next if I'm walking through your security environment? What comes next? What's the next layer?
So the next layer, again, it depends how much you want to have it open in there, or do you really want to continuously have it locked down? You will have...
What's your preference?
My preference is you have it locked down.
Yeah.
And that way, only authorized users can get to certain environments within that facility. And effectively looking at things, again, two-factor authentication, whether it's biometric or PIN and card, or there's multiple ways you can do two factors. It's not just biometrics. So definitely having two-factor again in that next layer. You have your video surveillance, which can be used to have a more in-depth review. So it's effectively making sure that you can identify the personnel that are actually walking in and around that environment, which is another topic that I wouldn't mind taking away in another session, and that is talking to the video surveillance and the different layers in video surveillance that you can actually utilize throughout your facility to make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons, and not having cameras from the perimeter all the way through your facility that are effectively 100% being able to identify a person, because that's just throwing money out the door in storage costs. So it's weighing all those options up again, but definitely a different discussion because there's at least an hour or two on that session alone.
That's
fine.
Look,
it's effectively... Yeah. But yeah, look, in the next layer, again, two-factor, video surveillance, policies and procedures, and that's where your keys actually start to come and play a lot more of a part in your environment, depending on what is in there. Are there mechanical, electrical plants that you're trying to protect? How do you protect that? And again, it boils down to your threat level and what is it that you're trying to mitigate as a risk.
The bane of every ops person's existence. I've got to go get the key from security to get into my MSB or check my diesel. Yeah. And look, technology has changed so much in the last decade. There is no reason why you can't have a key cabinet that someone walks up, badges, two-factor again on your key cabinet is my preference. That way you can actually monitor if you really wanted to exactly what's going on. But if you put that two-factor key cabinet within that perimeter, so your ops people can go and grab a key. You can have electronic keys today, which can be turned on and off in the period that they're required to be used. Because let's be honest, what are ops people famous for? Putting the keys in their pocket and walking out that door. Oh, come on, George. We're not that bad, but yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I guess you kind of want him to only have one key at a time, I guess. Or he's got his, the old guy, the old FM where he's got his big, long, round keychain with like 1,000 keys sitting on it. Lose that and we're in a whole world of hurt, So.
Yep. And my pet hate is the master keying system. Yeah, that for me is something that, again, another topic. I'm keen on that one, and I'm sure we'll have lots of
it's interesting, but I mean, it's probably more definitely being on the other side of the fence. I've got to get the key for that, and I've got to come back and return it, but I've got to get the key for that one. There's that perception there that it slows you down. We've got to do maintenance and going to slow down. But once you sit down and you talk to your team or talk to your vendor and go, hey, you're in a secure facility. It's not access all areas. And if you're only working on this part of the building today, guess what? That's the only part you're going to be in. And you've only got that key to get there, right? And it's pre-planning on the operation side, like where you're going to move through, and it's just that communication piece. But it can be frustrating at times because you might come back and have 5 different keys in a day as you're transiting through doing whatever we're doing. So... but a necessary evil, I think.
Look, you can't do without keys in today's environment, even in my opinion. But there's nothing stopping you putting those keys deeper into the layers and having those various boxes available for people to go and actually grab keys from, or safes, or whatever, however you want to set it up.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you putting them in there. But again, I am not a fan of those big rings of keys, and
Yes.
I'm not a fan of the master key that you can carry and open up every
Yep.
single door in your facility. That for me is, that's dinosaur thinking.
Yep. So would your intention be to keep, what you're protecting separate from the people who are trying to maintain the equipment there? Could you maybe run us through, are you putting that in your thinking with your, layer 5 and layer 6 as you go through?
100%. There is no need for an operational person to be in an environment that you're trying to protect. Having the segregation of your operational equipment that supports let's say your final environment separate is a must. You need to have some sort of not only physical separation, but electronic security or broader security separation. So that way you can manage not only who goes into that environment, but they're going to have a need to be in there. So even though your ElecMech or HVAC requires some sort of monitoring or physical inspections, that access has to be on an as required basis. So it's effectively putting the right mitigation strategies in place from the start to ensure that your final, let's call it your asset or your information location is as secure as you can have it through your layers of security and security risk management, and having them separated is a must. You just cannot afford to have them within the same environment as the asset you're trying to protect. You're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's that we always talk to the designers, when you go through and you're doing a new building, we want a clean side and a dirty side. Definitely from an ops perspective, we want the ability to, wheel equipment in and do maintenance, and, might have a board open, or we might be, working on a cooling unit or whatever that is, and not affect, the critical plant. So keeping that, what I would term clean side, dirty side.
Yep.
But it actually works hand in hand with your security posture, because I want the ability to drop, let's say, a drum of oil or, a new valve or something in the loading dock and get it all the way to where I want it to be without, hassling, or being visible to the customer. Or going through the environment you're trying to protect, or what we're actually being paid to do is, keep the lights on, keep the power on type stuff going through there.
And that's exactly right. It's about keeping the power and the lights on and providing that connectivity to that environment, so you can actually have your supporting infrastructure at a layer that may not need to be at the high security rating that you may require to do in a certain environment. For me, it's about trying to take out the complexity of your storage or security environment, so that way the customer that you're providing that environment for can focus on what they do best without even having to think about security, power, connectivity. They can focus on what they're trying to achieve.
And what about customer storerooms and stuff? Because you've got to give them access to there and manage that too, right? That can be a pain. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, for those environments, again, you have to work closely with your customer, and you can give them guidance as to the level of security you want to implement in those environments, and try and coach them on that front. But more importantly, you can actually provide, and I liked your terminology earlier, the choke points to reduce the amount of people being able to get to those environments anyways, if your customer wants a less secure environment for their storage room, where all their staff can access it, for example. But to get to it, they're going to have to go through your own security environment, which we can actually influence and guide and ensure that only authorized people get to the front of that door.
Yep. A lot of pre-planning and foresight that's got to go into it, right?
Oh, look, if people think about security as something that once effectively you've implemented it, it's a set and forget. And that is so wrong. In today's environment, especially with the convergence of security, and you're going to hear that a lot from me. I don't use the terminology physical, cyber, network as individual silos, because if you don't have a converged security posture today, you're setting yourself up for failure by building silos of various security programs that actually interact with each other. And further to that, if you're not reevaluating your security posture, your security risk management, your threats constantly, you're in trouble. So it's converged security is a must. You really need, as an organization, to take a step back, forget about how things used to work. A lot of maturity has happened, a lot of integration has happened, and you can have the best firewall and the best network security of an environment, but if any Joe Blow can walk up to that server, what's the point?
That's right. Yeah. No, that's it. So, no, well, thank you for that, George. I think I definitely got a lot out of that this morning. Hopefully the people watching, our one viewer that we've got clicked over now, whoever you are, thank you. But we might drop a couple of links there, because I think there was a couple of good YouTube videos. I think Google had a good one on their 6 layers of security that might cement some of the stuff in there that you were kind of talking about, and put a fancy video on there, unless we get you to make your own or something.
One's coming. It's on its way,
there you go. Okay.
It's on its way. So yeah, look, it's again. I think what's lacking in a lot of these videos that are out there at the moment is there's no real integration of policies, procedures, guidelines, the broader converged security model in some of these videos. So, because let's be honest, every camera that's deployed today is an IP camera. So there's network security issues, there's cyber security issues there. So this is why it's converged security. I'm pushing so hard with a lot of my peers to stop talking about the individual silos. So there is definitely a video coming on those layering of security and how it all ties in together.
Interesting. All right. Very good. Well, thank you for your time, mate. Always a pleasure. I'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, guys, and thank you.